And now that you know the 7 habits of highly effective people, I challenge you to go out and master them. You'll be excited by the results. Now, let's shift gears from checklists and balances to ownership of service. Here's a great quote from the great author and speaker Jim Collins. Good is the enemy of great. Just like we said back on day 2 of training, good enough seldom is. We must seek to be great at every possible moment. And being great at every possible moment means understanding 2 things. One, that every possible moment has an influence. And 2, an experience is made of multiple moments. It's not just the whole, it's the sum of its parts. And so if every moment has influence, we have to understand that it will either influence to the positive or to the negative. Okay, let's walk through an example of an experience in each of the moments of influence. For this example, we'll have just 10 moments of influence. So if all 10 were positive, and we'll walk through them real quick, if we made eye contact when they walked in or throughout the meal, we welcomed them with a smile, we shook their hands, we got their beverages out to them quickly, their water stayed filled, their food came out correctly, the table stayed clean of debris, the coffee was hot, and the check was ready when they asked, and at the end of the meal we walked them to the door. If we could do all 10 of those, and it was just 10, then we would have had a 10 out of 10, which would have been 100%. That would have been an exceptional experience. But what happens if all 10 of those get flipped to the negative? If we don't smile, we don't make eye contact, we don't welcome them in. And saying party of 2 with a smile is not a welcome. Just like at your home when someone comes to your door, if you want to welcome them in, you open the door and you guide them into your home. And you say, welcome back. That would be a welcome. If the beverages took 5 to 8 minutes, the water stayed empty, the food came out incorrect, the tables didn't get pre-bussed, the coffee stayed old or it was lukewarm, the check took 5 minutes, and it may have taken another 5 minutes after it was asked or requested again, and then we didn't walk them to the door. That would be a negative 10, 0 out of 10, 0%. We would have failed that experience. Now let's look at how this actually plays out in reality. If we took all 10 of those moments of influence and we only missed 2, and let's say the 2 that we missed were the food comes out incorrect and the check takes 5 minutes. Now most of us would think, wow, we missed 2 big ones. The food came out incorrect, that's terrible. Or the check took 5 minutes or more, and we all heard that that's the most influential moment during a meal because that's the one moment that a member or guest feels like they can control. So you would naturally think if we missed those 2, we created a bad experience. But in reality, just making the eye contact and shaking their hands and showing them attention and getting their beverages out quickly and making sure their waters stay filled and then keeping their table clean, walking them to the door, things like that, those are all great positive moments of influence. So if we can, in this example with 10, if we can get 8 out of 10, even if the 2 that we missed seem like very important ones, we would still score 80%. Now that sounds really good, but in the way we score things, 80% would be a B. It wouldn't be an A. It's better than a C, but it wouldn't be an A. So if we only had 10 moments of influence, we would actually need to seek 9 positive ones in order to be what we would call an A student. So now let's take a look at an example of what happens if we miss terribly. We miss the mark pretty bad. Let's say we just get 5 out of 10 correct. In our grading system, that would be a 50. That would be failure. But let's take a look at what those actually mean. We could look at the positive side of this example and say, well, we made eye contact. We got the beverages out quickly. The water stayed filled. The food came out correctly, and the check was ready when requested. Now, those are some big ones. You would think, wow, I hit the high points. But if you don't smile, and you didn't welcome them in when they came, and if you left their table dirty, and you didn't bother to walk them to the door, you would have missed out on some very important parts of the experience. So if there were only 10 to choose from and you only got 5 right, you would technically only have delivered a lukewarm experience, just like the coffee. So 5 out of 10 would have equated to 50%, which would be a failure. So I challenge you, when you're out on the floor, measure your moments of influence. Look at every interaction as the ability to influence the experience either to the positive or to the negative. And then ask yourself, what will I do to make this moment a positive moment of influence? And now that you can identify the moments of influence, you'll be able to see where they fit into the steps on the ownership of service cycle. The graphic on the screen represents the ownership of service chart, and you've probably seen one or multiple of these on the walls around the club. At least through this point in training, you've probably seen a few. Take a few moments with your trainer to have them walk you through the various steps on the ownership of service cycle. That way, you'll understand where the moments of influence will arise, and you'll be able to make conscious decisions as to how to influence those moments to the positive as opposed to the negative.
Hi, this is Chef Hyken. Let's get right to it with a story about a cab driver that delivers outstanding customer service.
It was in Dallas, Texas, middle of the summer, 102 degrees, sweltering. And I had just finished a program just like this. I walked out of the convention center dressed like this, had a couple of heavy suitcases, and I was in luck because up was pulling the taxi cab. Out jumps the driver. He comes around to take my bags. Let me describe to you what he looked like. Cut off shorts, a sleeveless shirt, messed up hair. Hadn't shaven in maybe a week. For all I know, he hadn't showered in a week. I look at this man and I think to myself, this is not a moment of magic. This is a moment of misery. Why? As I look at him, I'm thinking, what does the inside of that taxi cab look like? I mean, look at him. You know it's dirty and grimy in there. You know there's no air conditioning. It's probably broken. I'm going to get into this moving sauna, and 25 minutes later, I will be drenched in sweat. The suit will be wrinkled for the day, and about the time I actually get out of the cab, a little spring's going to pop through the vinyl seat and rip my pants. So I look at him, and he looks at me, and he says in this deep Texan accented voice, sounded nothing like the man that I was looking at, and I can't even get as low as he can go, but I'll try. He said, "Get in the cab. It's nice and cool inside the cab. I'll take care of the bags." And he smiled. It didn't look right. Sure didn't sound right. I looked behind the cab to see if there's a ventriloquist. Well, I handed the gentleman my bags. I opened the door, and cool air hit me in the face. The air conditioners worked just fine. As a matter of fact, it was cold inside the cab. And as I got in, the cab was spotlessly clean, and sitting on the seat next to me were two newspapers, the local Dallas paper and a USA Today, and right in the middle where the hump is, there was a bucket with ice and 2 soft drinks. Couldn't believe it. I had to look back to make sure the guy was still putting the bags in the back of the cab. Eventually, he gets into the front seat, picks up a dish of candy, turns around, offers me a piece of candy, and that's when I remembered what Mom always said. Don't ever take candy from strangers. This was different. I took the candy, and I asked the guy, "Is this your cab, or are you, like, borrowing it for the day?" And he answered me. He said, and I won't get as low as he can go, he said, "This is my cab, and you make yourself at home. The newspapers are yours to take with you at the end of the trip, no extra charge. The sodas are yours to drink, compliments of me. Have as much candy as you'd like, and by the way, it's a $22 flat rate, which is the same rate that any honest cab driver would charge you from downtown out to the airport. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride." And I thought, wow, this guy's good. We get onto the highway. He asked me a question no cab driver has ever asked me before. "Are you in a hurry? Is it okay if I do the speed limit?" Well, by that time, I was reading a newspaper, drinking a soda. I said, "Take your time." Then we start to talk to one another. He asked me questions like, where are you from? What do you do for a living? We start to converse. And then he asked me if I'd ever seen the famous fountain at Las Colinas. I said, I'm not sure. He described it to me. I said, I've seen a picture. He said, then you've got to see it in person. And he started to get excited. It is right on the way to the airport. If you've got an extra few minutes, I would love to show you the fountain. Just to block off the highway, and I'm not going to charge any extra money. It's a $22 flat rate from downtown out to the airport. And it's not only the most beautiful fountain in the entire Dallas area, it may be the most beautiful fountain in the entire United States. Would you like to see the fountain? I said, show me the fountain. I was getting excited. A mile or so later, he pulls off the highway, and there it is, the beautiful fountain. And he jumped out of the cab, and he pulled me out. He said, look at that. Is that the most beautiful fountain you've ever seen? I'm thinking, you're strange, man. It's just a fountain. But for those that aren't familiar with it, larger than life-size statues of horses galloping across the water. And where their hooves are hitting the water, it's splashing up. And I swear, as you look at these horses, these statues, you can sense energy and motion. And if you didn't see the big buildings behind this mountain, you'd swear you were looking out on the prairie at horses running across the water. And he goes on and on about it. We're back in the cab. We're on our way back to the airport. And he asked me for a business card because he collects the cards of the people he works for. And we exchanged cards. And he said, the next time you come back to Dallas, you call me. You let me know what time, what flight, what airline. He says, I will be there. I won't charge you any extra money. It's a $22 flat rate. But I will treat you like a limousine driver. I will park the cab outside. I will walk inside. And when you go over to get your bags, I will be standing there with open arms, ready to help you out. He said, don't worry, you'll recognize me. So we get to the airport. It's $22. He gets a huge tip.